Jesus, one day you will bind every wound. The former things shall all pass away. No more tears. One day you'll make sense of it all. Jesus, one day every question resolved. Every anxious thought left behind. No more fear. And when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. One day we will see face to face Jesus. Is there a greater vision of grace? And in a moment we shall be changed on that day. And one day we'll be free, free indeed. Jesus, one day all the struggle will cease. And we will see your glory revealed on that day. And when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Yes,
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Idaho Bible Study Live. I know this week has been a difficult one. Those of you that have been watching the news and following world events, there's been a lot of distress in our nation. And I know there are a lot of people that are apprehensive about the world that we're living in and the times in which we live. You're not alone, but there is an answer. There is a solution to this problem. Tonight I want to talk just a minute about the solution. If you spend too much time looking at the negative things that are going on around us, it could drag you away into a dark place and leave you weak and distressed and disabled. So I think it's profitable for us sometimes just to remember the blessings that we have in our life. There's someone that I want to speak about tonight who was a blessing to my life. Ben and I were friends from a very young age. When I first moved back to Tennessee as a young child and I started school, Ben was one of the first people that I met. As a matter of fact, Ben's mother was my third grade teacher, Miss Donna Scruggs. And she was my first teacher when I moved to Tennessee. Ben's dad was our basketball coach, a good basketball coach. My second basketball coach ever. The first was Coach Cassidy, followed by Coach Scruggs. And he was not only a good coach, he was a good man. Well, most of you are aware that just a few weeks ago I lost my father. And it was a terribly painful moment for me. And I'm still struggling with this feeling of loss. But God embraced me in a powerful way during this time of tragedy. And he did so through many of his servants. Ben was one of those people that reached out to me in my time of distress. And his message to me was one of encouragement. He encouraged me to look up, for our salvation draweth near. And it truly helped me in a time when I was in need of a word of encouragement. Ben was one of them that provided that for me. Our stories are similar in that both Ben and I both departed from good counsel. We were both raised by good parents. We were both tremendously blessed to be raised by good people. But we chose for a while to go and explore the world and the pleasures of the world. And oftentimes, while I was out in places where someone that was raised right shouldn't be, doing things that someone who was raised properly shouldn't do, I occasionally would run into Ben. So I was incredibly encouraged and blessed to discover when Ben contacted me to encourage me during the loss of my father, that Ben too had given his heart to Jesus Christ. It didn't take long for me to discern that Ben was a changed man. I wasn't surprised by this because growing up with Ben, he was always a person with a good heart. Just everybody knew that about Ben. He was a good person. Regardless of when he might have slipped up or made poor decisions in his life, he was always good-hearted person. It was evident from his youth. A testament, obviously, to his tremendous parents. So, when I came home last night, Friday evening from work, my beautiful wife had a great meal prepared, pretty excited when I came in to discover that there was all this food prepared. And I went and sat at the table with my wife and children, and I had my cell phone with me at the time, and I just laid it down next to my plate on the table, and I must have touched the Facebook app when I laid the phone down, and this prompt came up, or this post by a young lady named Fee Copus, who I also went to school with when I was young. She was a student at the same school that Ben and I attended as children. Haven't talked to her in probably 30 years, but this post caught my attention as it spoke to the passing of Ben Scruggs. I immediately private messaged her because I couldn't believe it. I thought I had misread, or that maybe this was a different Ben Scruggs. At least that was my hope. What I discovered was that Ben was on his way to work in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and was involved in an automobile accident and had passed away. So tonight I'd like to do a tribute to my brother and my friend Ben Scruggs. I know that I've been reading a lot here lately, and maybe that's less than interesting. But when my father passed away, I remembered something that I had read years before. And I went digging around and found it, and I read it to my children. And I found myself becoming very emotional as I read it. So I'm going to warn you in advance that as I'm trying to read this, it may become difficult for me to get through it, because looking back on the history of me reading this particular passage that's found in a really old book called Early Writings, I've never been able to get through this vision that was put down on pen, on paper, without becoming extremely emotional. Because it paints this picture that once it's formed in your mind, you can't unsee it. And it leaves you homesick for a place that you've never been. At the same time, I think it's extremely important that we get this picture. That this picture is established in our psyche, in our minds, and in our hearts, so that we remember this precious hope that has been set before us. So I'm asking you to bear with me. I'm going to do some reading again tonight. I'm going to share this passage with you. And I hope it paints a beautiful picture in your mind about things to come. And then it gives you a little break from all the bad news we've been bombarded with as of late, including that of the passing of our good friend Ben Scruggs. This is what Ben was looking forward to. This is what I'm looking forward to. And I'd like to share it with you tonight. And I pray after hearing it, maybe you will also determine in your heart that this is what you want to look forward to. Bear with me a moment. I'd like to get something on the screen here if I could. Of course, I'm going to have some type of technical difficulty. That would only make sense. Anyhow, I'm sure that the enemy of our souls would prefer that I don't read this to you. I just had some slides prepared so that you didn't have to stare at me while I was trying to read at the tiny words on this little tablet. I looked for an actual hardback copy of the book because I have it somewhere, but as you know, I've recently moved to Idaho, and about half of my book collection is unfortunately still in a box somewhere, and I've yet to find it. And now, of course, my computer is not connecting. So maybe not. Maybe I won't be able to share the slideshow. Anyhow. I'll attempt to get it on screen maybe. Or maybe I'll just have to read with you staring at me as I do. Anyhow, if I can get it on screen later, maybe I will. Anyhow, this is from the book Early Writings, starting at the bottom of page 15 for those of you who want to go look it up and read it again for yourself later. This young lady was in vision, and she had a glimpse of something beautiful, and I'd like to share it with you. She said, "Soon our eyes were drawn to the east, for a small black cloud had appeared, about half as large as a man's hand, which we all knew was the sign of the Son of Man. We all in solemn silence gazed on the cloud as it drew nearer and became lighter, glorious, and still more glorious, till it was a great white cloud. The bottom appeared like fire. A rainbow was over the cloud, while around it were 10,000 angels, singing a most lovely song. And upon it sat the Son of Man. His hair was white and curly and lay on his shoulders. Upon his head were many crowns. His feet had the appearance of fire, In his right hand was a sharp sickle, in his left a silver trumpet. His eyes were as a flame of fire, which searched his children through and through. Then all faces gathered paleness, and those that God had rejected gathered blackness. Then they all cried out, "Who shall be able to stand? Is my robe spotless?" Then the angels ceased to sing, and there was some time of awful silence when Jesus spoke. "Those who have clean hands and pure hearts shall be able to stand. My grace is sufficient for you." At this our faces lighted up, and joy filled every heart. The angels struck a note higher and sang again, while the cloud drew still nearer to the earth. Then Jesus, silver trumpet in hand, as he descended on the cloud wrapped in flames of fire, he gazed on the graves of the sleeping saints, then raised his eyes and hands to heaven and cried, "Awake! Awake! Awake! Ye that sleep in the dust, and arise." Then there was a mighty earthquake. The graves were opened, and the dead came up, clothed with immortality. The 144,000 shouted, "Hallelujah!" And they recognized their friends who had been torn from them by death. And in the same moment we were changed and caught up together with them to meet the Lord in the air. We all entered the cloud together, and were 7 days ascending to the sea of glass, when Jesus brought the crowns, and with his own right hand placed them on our heads. He gave us harps of gold and palms of victory. Here on the sea of glass, the 144,000 stood in a perfect square. Some of them had very bright crowns, others not so bright. Some crowns appeared heavy with stars, while others had but few. All were perfectly satisfied with their crowns, and they were all clothed with a glorious white mantle from their shoulders to their feet. Angels were all about us as we marched over the sea of glass to the gate of the city. Jesus raised his mighty, glorious arm and laid hold on the pearly gate, swung it back on its glittering hinges, and said to us, "You have washed your robes in my blood, stood stiffly for my truth. Enter in." We all marched in and felt that we had a perfect right in the city. Here we saw the tree of life and the throne of God. Out of the throne came a pure river of water, and on either side of the river a tree of life. On one side of the river was the trunk of the tree, and a trunk on the other side of the river, both of pure transparent gold. At first I thought I saw 2 trees. I looked again and saw that they were united at the top in one tree. So it was the tree of life on either side of the river of life. Its branches bowed to the place where we stood, and the fruit was glorious. It looked like gold mixed with silver. We all went under the tree and sat down to look at the glory of the place, when Brother Fitch and Stockman, who had preached the gospel of the kingdom and whom God had laid in the grave to save them, came up to us and asked us what we had passed through while they were sleeping. We tried to call up our greatest trials, but they looked so small compared with the far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory that surrounded us that we could not speak them out. And we all cried out, "Hallelujah! Heaven is cheap enough." And we touched our glorious harps and made heaven's arches ring. With Jesus at our head, we all descended from the city down to this earth, on a great mighty mountain which could not bear Jesus up, and it parted asunder, and there was a mighty plain. Then we looked up and we saw a great city with 12 foundations and 12 gates, 3 on each side, and an angel at each gate. We cried out, "The city, the great city is coming. It's coming down from God out of heaven." And it came and settled on the place where we stood. Then we began to look at the glorious things outside the city. There I saw most glorious houses that had the appearance of silver, supported by 4 pillars, set with pearls, most glorious to behold. They were to be inhabited by the saints. In each was a golden shelf. I saw many of the saints go into their houses, take off their glittering crowns and lay them on the shelf. Then go out into the field by the house and do something with the earth. Not as we have to do on earth here. No, a glorious light shone all about their heads, and they were continually shouting and offering praises to God. I saw another field, full of all kinds of flowers. And as I plucked them, I cried out, "They will never fade." Next I saw a field of tall grass, most glorious to behold. It was living green, and had a reflection of silver and gold, as it waved proudly to the glorious King Jesus. Then we entered them, a field full of all kinds of beasts, the lion, the lamb, the leopard, and the wolf, all together in perfect union. We passed through the midst of them, and they followed on peaceably after. Then we entered a wood, not like the dark woods we have here, no, but light and all over glorious. The branches of the trees moved to and fro, and we all cried out, "We will dwell safely in the wilderness and sleep in the woods." We passed through the woods, for we were on our way to Mount Zion. As we were traveling along, we met a company who also gazed at the glories of the place. I noticed red as a border on their garments. Their crowns were brilliant, their robes pure white. As we greeted them, I asked Jesus who they were. He said they were the martyrs that had been slain for him. With them was an innumerable company of little ones. They also had a hem of red on their garments. Mount Zion was just before us, and on the mount was a glorious temple, and about it were 7 other mountains on which grew roses and lilies. I saw the little ones climb, or, if they chose, use their little wings to fly to the top of the mountains and pluck the never-fading flowers. There were all kinds of trees around the temple to beautify the place. The box, the pine, the fir, the olive, the myrtle, the pomegranate, and the fig tree bowed down with the weight of its timely figs. These made the place all over glorious. And as we were about to enter the holy temple, Jesus raised his lovely voice and said, "Only the 144,000 shall enter this place." And we shouted, "Alleluia!" This temple, supported by 7 pillars, all of transparent gold, set with pearls most glorious. The wonderful things I there saw I cannot describe. Oh, that I could talk the language of Canaan. Then I could tell a little of the glory of the better world. I saw their tables of stone in which the names of the 144,000 were engraved in letters of gold. After we beheld the glory of the temple, we went out, and Jesus left us and went to the city. Soon we heard his lovely voice again saying, "Come, my people, you have come out of great tribulation and have done my will. You have suffered for me. Come into the supper, for I will gird myself and serve you." We shouted, "Hallelujah! Glory!" And we entered into the city, and I saw a table of pure silver. It was many miles in length, yet our eyes could extend over it. I saw the fruit of the tree of life, the manna, almonds, figs, pomegranates, grapes, and many other kinds of fruit. I asked Jesus to let me eat of the fruit, and he said, "Not now. Those who eat of the fruit of this land go back to earth no more. But in a little while, if faithful, you shall both eat of the fruit of the tree of life and drink of the water of the fountain. And he said, you must go back to earth again and relate to others what I have revealed to you. Then an angel bore me gently down to this dark world. Sometimes I think I can stay here no longer. All things on earth look so dreary. I feel very lonely here. For I've seen a better land. Oh, that I had wings like a dove, then would I fly away and be at rest. Rest in peace, Ben Scruggs. We love you, brother, and we will see you soon. Choose you this day. I think Ben would want me to make this appeal to you. Choose you this day who you will serve, God or mammon, this earth or the one to come. The choice is all yours. Jesus said, I will go away, and if I go away, I will come again and receive you unto myself. He's gone to prepare a place for you. And tonight we've got a little picture of that place. And I tell you, I'm getting tired of being here. In some ways, I envy Ben that his warfare is over. But we will see you again soon, brother. God bless you all. Good night.
We all get to heaven. What a day of rejoicing that will be. And when we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Oh, one day, we'll be singing loud. Yes, one day we will see face to face Jesus. Is there a greater vision of grace? And in a moment we shall be changed. In a moment we shall be changed. Yes, in a moment we shall be changed. On that day. And when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Oh, we'll sing and shout the victory.